So back again for another feature card buddy fight deck profile. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and donate to the page. Also, let's get started. If you are wondering why I'm doing a deck profile on one, the last week that I'm actually going to be doing YouTube for a while, and two, after not playing buddy fight for I think a few months actually, it's because someone named Deadman Flames is requested for a Yami Ghetto, not Yami Ghetto, but an updated version of my 100 Demons deck with stuff from Buddy Ragnarok. Unfortunately for him, I only got one card useful out of Buddy Ragnarok, so I hope that's what he wants. So let's go ahead and get this started. So first up, the flag parade of... Oh, okay, here it is. The Luminize chant. So the Luminize chant, fuck, I forgot to copy and paste that, is the same as last time, where it's just Yami Ghetto, Lord of Thunder, strike down your foe with your great thunderous power, Luminize 100, Lord of 100 Thunders. I was too lazy to change this, and I honestly like this, so I'm not going to change it. The flag is Parade of 100 Demons, as expected, where you can use any 100 demons from any world in their attribute and generic cards. And onto the buddy. This blurry motherfucker. Okay, good news is I took a picture because I couldn't actually find a clearer version of it that was in English. So, Great Fiend, Yami Ghetto, Rebuddy. Ignore the text right there, I forgot to change it. So, call cost, put one or more 100 so it's a size 3, put one or more 100 demons monsters from your field into the soul and pay 3 gauge. This card gets all Thunder Mines of the card in your soul, and at the start of each player's turn, put up to 200 demons with different card names in total from your hand or deck into this card's soul. If you looked in your deck, shuffle it, and then Thunder Mine when the attack of this card on your field is nullified. When the attack of a card on your field is nullified by opponent, deal 2 damage to your opponent. It also has triple attack and soul guard. So that's a really good card. One, it just gets all the Thunder Mine in its soul and has its own Thunder Mine, which honestly was the problem with me with Resurrected Evil Deity Yami Ghetto, because he only got the Thunder Mines in his soul and nothing else. This is actually good because it has its own Thunder Mine. It can get the Thunder Mines in its soul, and at the start of each player's turn, you can search for up to 1 from your deck and or hand. Actually, no, it says 2 from both, from your hand and or deck, so that you can just straight up get what you need from your deck, put them in a soul, deck thin for cards that you might need on their own, and then just have Yami Ghetto be a giant beat stick with a bunch of soul and have multiple Thunder Mines, which is really good. And then, if your opponent tries to nullify an attack, they're taking 2 damage. So, amazing, and it has triple attack. So it's either they take 6 damage, or they take 6 damage. It's literally one of the two. So, amazing card. That's the buddy. Okay, on to size 0s. 2 copies of Evil Dryad, 3k power, 1k defense, critical of 1. Thunder Mine, when a size 2 monster enters the opponent's field, deal 1 damage to the opponent. This ability only activates once per turn. So, that's really good. Whenever they call size 2, most of the time people, or at least to my knowledge, people put size 2s as their buddy monsters. So basically getting to nullify their buddy call is really nice. And then, just being able to punish them, like, say normally when you rush someone, you either call 3 size 1s or a size 2 and a size 1, then equip an item. So, you can punish them for bringing down that size 2 for the rush capability. So, a really good card that's just really nice to have. 2 copies. 4 copies of Mikazuchi Mech Trooper Jardim. 1k power, 2k defense, critical of 1, size 0. When this card enters the field, you may drop a hand card. If you do, put the top card of your deck into your gauge and put up to 100 demons item from your deck into your hand and shuffle your deck. So, get a free search for the item. The item did not change from last time. I wanted it to change, but the other item was $5 a piece. So that already explains my answer. But anyways, it also has a Thunder Mine where when your opponent gains life, deal 1 damage to your opponent. This ability only activates once per turn. Another way to nullify Buddy Gift, because they just fucking buddy call and then they take a damage. If you have both this and Dread on the field, they just take 2 damage for buddy calling. So, really nice card. 4 copies, and is a really good target for Yami Ghetto straight off the bat, because it does stack. So just send all 4 to soul, and you got, when they gain life at all, it damages them by 4. Next up, we got 1 copy of Stranger Dilemma at size 1. 3k power, 2k defense, critical of 1. Thunder Mine, when your opponent casts a spell, deal 1 damage to your opponent. This ability only activates once per turn. Okay, so, real quickly, before you ask, the reason why the deck is so weird with the numbers is because if I do end up deciding to buy Yami Ghetto, because when I played this deck in area, I didn't really like it that much, so if I do decide to buy it in real life, this is the build I'm most likely going with. But anyways, which is why the numbers are weird, because these are only numbers of the copies that I own. But anyways, that Thunder Mine is really good because whenever your opponent's going to nullify something, it's most likely going to be with a spell, via spell, or like maybe a monster effect from drop. Who knows? Because this isn't Yu-Gi-Oh! Where you can just nullify from hand. But still, whenever they cast a spell, you get to deal damage. Like, say you have the buddy on the field, this is in the soul, and then you've got 2 Jarms on field and 2 in the soul. Your opponent is using Dragon World, and like you attack with the Great Fiend Yami Ghetto Buddy. They Green Dragon Shield it, they gain a life, like say they go to 11, Yami Ghetto deals 2 effect damage, this does 1 damage, and then the Jarms in total deal 4 damage. So your opponent just took about, if I did the math correctly, 7 damage from 1 life gaining. So, well, from just casting a spell actually, so you know, really good. So 1 copy, I would suggest more, I do not have more. Next up, Death Ruler Daredevil. This is at 1 card I would actually keep at 1 copy because this is as... I don't know what I don't like about it. It's just a card that I kind of want to keep at 1 copy. So 1k power, 1k defense, critical of 2. It's literally not meant for fighting to the death. If it fights anything to the death, it's going to lose. Shadow Dive, this card can attack your opponent even if there's a monster in the center. That's mainly why it's here. But also Thundermine. During your turn, when a monster on the opponent's field is destroyed, deal 1 damage to your opponent. Yeah, this is normally the card you just shove to RB's Soul right away because there's only 1 copy of this. Like, you would send these 2 to Soul because there's only 1 copy of each of them, so, you know, get the setup for later. And that burn damage, there's enough burn damage as is, and your opponent is most likely going to defend their monsters, so you might as well punish them for calling them when they can't. Because they cannot stop you for punishing them from calling them, but they can stop you from killing them. So, it's better to punish them for just calling them than punish them for having them just stay on the field. So 1 copy, he's still useful, but there's a lot of ways to stop him. Thankfully though, thanks to RB, if they do decide to stop him, they actually take 2 damage. So it's either take 1 damage and lose your monster, or take 2 damage and keep your monster. Which one's more important to you? That's the fun little thing to decide. Call Dragon Migidos. So 3k power, 3k defense, critical of 2. This card cannot be called to the center. Thundermine. When a card is put into your opponent's gauge, deal 1 damage to your opponent. This ability activates once per turn. When your opponent is dealt damage by the effect of Thundermine, put this card into the drop zone. So that's why it's at 1 copy, because the second they take damage by any Thundermine, doesn't matter if it's this thing or something else, it dies immediately. But the fact that it just deals them a damage for charging a gauge, oh, that's the beauty of it. Shove this into Yami Ghetto's Soul, they will most likely charge a gauge. And it's by any means. It doesn't say charge a gauge during a certain phase. So they could charge a gauge by effect, or they could like genuinely do the charge and draw, and they're taking that damage, and that's the fun part of it. Because if they're at 1 damage and they need gauge, they can't get gauge unless they want to kill themselves. Or in that case, they're playing 5th Omnis, or any deck that has a revival card. Hint, hint, most of the decks in the meta have a revival card. And unless they're using that 1 generic card that I believe is a revival card. I forgot what it's called. I think it's Buddy something. And it just uses a revival card basically. But unless they want to risk everything on the charging of the gauge, then they can't charge gauge, which is so fun about Migidos and why I love him so much. So 1 copy. We got 2 copies of Battle Hyena Dolez. So 3k power, 2k defense, critical of 1. This is the only card in the deck that doesn't have Thundermine to my knowledge, or from what I remember. You may only call this card if you have a dungeon enemy or a 100 demons monster on the field. When your opponent is dealt damage by the effect of a card, put this card from your field into the drop, and if you do, put the top card of your deck into your gauge and draw a card. So you know, standard kill itself, draw a card, get a gauge, then draw a card, which is still useful because the deck is more or less gauge heavy. Depending on what you open up with, your deck can be gauge. This can turn into a really gauge heavy deck, so it just really depends on what your opening hand is. But in the off chance that your opening hand is like something that's really gauge heavy, and if your opponent's a very destructory deck, like say you're playing 5th Omnis and they're a very aggressive deck where they can destroy your monsters very easily, that can make this deck very gauge heavy because you have to constantly recall the Yami Ghettos. So this being here is a nice little tech because it can just fix your gauge problem. Because normally you're like, when I was playing it in area, it was like 1 or 2 gauge short from being able to do plays, especially when I played against 5th Omni. Fucking 5th Omni is killing me. Then again, I shouldn't be talking because I kind of main 5th Omnis. But either way, decent card. It can get you out of a pinch if needed. 2 copies. 2 copies of One Winged Hate Dragon Left Slasher. 5k power, 1k defense, critical of 1. Size 1. Pay a gauge call it. Spectral Strike. When attacked by this card, destroys an opponent's monster, deal 1 damage. And Thundermine. When a monster enters your opponent's field on the left, deal 1 damage to your opponent. This ability activates once per turn. Now, the sucky part about the Slendermine is, if they do not call it to the left, it's not going to do shit. But, thanks to all the new cards that come out, let me tell you why this would work. 1, against another Yami Ghetto deck, since the Yami Ghetto is basically the main size 3, if they do decide to call, they're just going to call size 0s, they'll most likely call them to the left and right. Boom! Damage from the left. All the decks now have items, or most of the decks now, have items that allow you to attack if you have a very certain archetype on the field / in the center, which means since they're going to do that, that means they could actually call out a full field into, hence, the left. And since most of these cards are size 1s or can act as size 0s, they can call size 2s, they can call something to the center, and then they can call something to the left. Hence where you get to punish them. So those updated cards, they make it good for their deck, but this little thing over here that I just happened to pull in a pack actually becomes useful. So this card I decided to keep for whatever reason in my deck, beyond my better judgment, otherwise for the sake of it having Thundermine, is actually a really good card. So 2 copies. Anyone else who says that, screw off, because this actually does do something useful. Next up, we got 3 copies of Orc-Sized Dragon, 3k power, 3k defense, critical of 1, Thundermine. When a size 1 monster enters the opponent's field, deal 1 damage to the opponent. Okay. Now, your opponent's cards, they mostly can count as size 0s, and I'm pretty sure it will count as a size 1 when it enters the field, so you can just do burn damage that way. But also, plus, people constantly call size 1s because, they're a really good just size to call unless you're using a size 3 base deck, dual Jaeger, ahem. But either way, this is actually a really good card, and I can keep this for 1 because it's good, because it's just a constant size 1 punish, but also moral-wise, because this was the first, I guess when I first started Buddy Fight, this was the first trial deck I ever bought was technically Sun Dragons, but this I got first because I ordered Sun Dragons and this at the same the 100 Demons trial deck at the same time, and 100 Demons came first, and up until I got the customizations and added 4 copies of Resurrected Evil Deity Yami Ghetto, this was the buddy. So for moral reasons, I actually have to keep this in the deck, and he deserves to be in the deck because so many times he actually saved me from a pinch. So 3 copies. This is supposed to be at 4. Let me quickly fix that. You just get to watch me fix that. Okay. Anyways, 4 copies of the Light Spectre Yami Ghetto Mikazuchi. Ignore the name right there because once more I forgot to edit this. So AK size 3, AK power, AK defense, critical of 2, and because there's no size 2s in this deck, because I'm pretty sure I got rid of all the size 2 for this. Did I get rid of all the size 2s for this? Did I? I did. No, I didn't. Real quickly, Zazamera. I am sorry, I am very out of order today. So anyways, Zazamera. So, size 2, 6k base, 5k defense, critical of 2, size 2. Thundermine, when a size 2 monster enters your opponent's field, deal 1 damage to the opponent. This ability activates once per turn. So, if they call size 2, which is most likely going to be their buddy monster, you get to punch them for doing so. So just really nice card to have. So 4 copies. And now on to Mikazuchi over here. So, Mikazuchi. AK base, AK attack, AK defense, AK power, 2 crit, size 3. Put 1 Light Spectre Yami Ghetto Mikazuchi. Put 1 or more 100 demons monsters from your field into the soul and pay 2 gauge. At the end of your turn, you may pay a life. If you do, call up to 1 monster with Yami Ghetto and its card name from your hand or drop zone on top of this card without paying its call cost. And Thundermine, when your monster on your opponent's field attacks alone, deal 1 damage to the opponent, double attack, and soul guard. So those are really good abilities. So let's just talk about those for a second. So one of them is a genuine just fucking search for Yami Ghetto from either your hand or drop, and you can just stack it on top of this. Hint, hint, this. So you just get to constantly do that, or you can just search for this because it isn't once per turn with the ability. So you could just stack all of these into the soul at once and then just immediately get out this thing, but I just suggest you getting it on the first try. So this is kind of what you want to see first, but then again it can still work because you can just search for it with this. But it's really useful, and it can... So one, it's just a free search for Yami Ghetto. If it ends up in drop somehow, like your opponent's using a mill deck, you can just get it straight out from drop, or it ended up in your hand and you didn't have the gauge to call it for whatever reason, or like say your hand was beautiful, because this only cost 2 gauge to bring out, which is basically the starting gauge, and say like your hand was beautiful and you didn't want to charge anything, you could just and this was in your hand, and so was the other Yami Ghetto, you could just straight up call this. And since it says you can call it without paying its call cost, you could just wait till next turn, and then just, oh no, sorry, it's at the end of your turn. You can just wait till the end of your turn, pay a life, and then just get it. So, really helpful card. And it's just a really amazing. And then at the start of your opponent's next turn, you just get to search your deck for 2 cards with Thundermine. And then when your opponent attacks alone, unless they're playing Sun Dragons, it's actually going to be very often, they will take a damage. So that's really helpful. So double attack, Soul Guard, and really nice. So 4 copies. And now 4 copies of Great Fiend Yami Ghetto. Buddy. We already know what he does. Ignore the Resurrected Evil Deity part right there. So I'm just going to go ahead and skip him because we already know what he does. Now into spells. 1 copy of Scorner Gremlin. This is mainly here because it's a nullify. It can only be cast during your opponent's turn when they attack, and it can only nullify the attack if it's not a link attack. So I only run this for that one reason, because it's a nullifier, and then that's it, because it can only nullify if it's not a link attack. But if it's a link attack, it gets nullified on its own. So kind of sucky, but it's okay. So 1 copy. 1 copy of 100 Demons Destructive Power Regia. So you only cast this card if you have 100 demons on your field. Counter, destroy a monster on the opponent's field. Destroy a monster on your field, my bad. And if you do, gain 3 life. So, they attack something, you kill it, you gain 3 life of it. Or since Yami Ghetto's going to have a fuck ton of soul, you can just kill Yami Ghetto when they attack into it. It loses a soul anyways, so so basically the attack whiffed, and then you gain 3 life out of it. So, really fucking beautiful. 1 copy. 1 copy of Ghetto Shield. Now, to all the people that say I would run this at 4, once more, as I said earlier, if I buy this deck in real life, this is basically the build I'm using, so shut it if you run Ghetto Shield at 4. I do suggest running Ghetto Shield at 4, but I only have 1 Ghetto Shield, so... Anyways, you may only cast this card if during an attack on the opponent's turn, and if there are 2 or more 100 demons on your field. Cast cost, pay a gauge, counter, nullify the attack, and deal 1 damage to the opponent. This card cannot be nullified. So getting to do just a free damage just by nullifying an attack is just beautiful, and... for whatever reason, if they were to try to counter this, most likely your Thunder Mines would go off, so your opponent doesn't really have much choice but to just take this. Next up, 2 copies of 100 Demon Sorcery Yami Tage. It's just a straight up nullify as long as you have 100 demons on your field. Thankfully, your set spells count as 100 demons, so this can just be useful at all. So 2 copies. 2 copies of You've Finally Done It. You may only cast this card if you take... Is that? Okay, it's not in all caps. So anyways, you may only cast this card when you would take damage by the opponent's card, counter, draw a card, and then if you have a Dark Hero 100 Demons monster on your field, deal 1 damage to your opponent. So you get a guaranteed draw, and then you get to burn your opponent 1 damage if you end up taking damage, and you have 100 Demons / Dark Hero on your field. So a really nice and helpful card. 2 copies. 3 copies of Starved Yami Ghetto. Set, when a monster on your field is destroyed, you get a gauge. You may only set 1 Starved Yami Ghetto on the field. So this card basically fixes the gauge problem. If you set this early on, you will never have a gauge problem. But it's, like I said, just in case your opening hand is very gauge heavy, you don't have to worry about it. So 3 copies. 4 copies of 100 Demon Sorcery Thunderbolt Exploding Circle. So you may only cast this card if you have a size 3 monster with Yami Ghetto and its card name on your field. Counter, draw a card and choose one of the following 2. So it's a guaranteed draw, and that's the good part, and then it can give you something else. So stand 100 demons on your field. Hint, hint, this isn't once per turn. You could just straight up restand it. I did that so many times. What I did, no joke, I'm pretty sure I said this in the last time I did this deck profile, but I got 4 of them. I had 2 of them in my opening hand, and I just saved them up for Yami Ghetto. And then when I used them, both of them let me draw into 2 more Thunderbolt Exploding Circles. So that was just a free 5 attack Yami Ghetto right there, and it was a straight up 10 damage, which is the fun part. And then choose a monster on your opponent on your field, and you gain life equal to the chosen monster side. And for this turn, the next time be destroyed, nullifies destruction. So you could either use it to attack with, or you can use it to defend your Yami Ghettos. So either way, really nice card. 4 copies. 4 copies of the other card in this deck that kind of makes this deck kind of not gauge heavy, and at the same time, if it wasn't once per turn, it would most likely be banned or limited. Harakiri Vortex. The abilities of all 100 demons on your field cannot be nullified, and their souls cannot be dropped by your opponent's card effects. While your opponent is dealt damage by the effect of your card effects by any mean, but put the top card of your deck into your gauge, gain a life, and draw a card. So it's just a free +1 to everything, really, and that's just a nice card to have. Unfortunately, it's once per turn, but if it wasn't once per turn, it would most likely be banned. And you may only set 1 of them on the field. Once more, probably be limited if it wasn't that case. So 4 copies, really nice card. It can get you resources, and it can just get you everything you need. And it can make it a lot harder for your opponent to catch up when they're taking constant damage by Thundermine and they can't even touch your life. And finally, the last card in the deck, 4 copies of Fang/Claws Gorika. 3k power, 1k crit, 1 crit, and then this card can attack even if you have a monster in the center. It has no cost to equip, and all 100 demon monsters in your field cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. So this immediately says fuck you, 5th Omnis, which is why I love it so much. 5th Omnis have nothing on this now, because 5th Omnis was the one time the writers decided to give the anime character the advantage over against the antagonist, because the antagonist deck focused on burn damage. What did 5th Omnis do best? Deal effects when their effects go up when you take burn damage. So the one time they had the counter against it, guess what? That counter was just nullified. Finally, after 5 years, the writers decided to do something smart. Anyways, counteract. During your opponent's turn, choose a size 300 demons on your field and put this card from the field into the drop. If you do for this turn, the chosen card gets plus 10k power, defense, and counterattack. So that's really good. Giving Yami Ghetto, say they somehow got the ability to kill it on one turn, you could just destroy this. Its power and defense gets much stronger, which makes it harder, and then you get the ability to counterattack and beat the shit out of them. So, really useful card. 4 copies. Well, that was the deck. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and donate to the Patreon. See you all in the next one. Don't forget to raise your flag.